Well, with 3 episodes remaining and the plan set in motion, it's safe to say that the Battle of Winterfell will definitely not be the biggest battle of this season, without a doubt.
Don't change the channel, don't touch that dial. We got it all on UHF. Take off your sneakers.
Hey guys, it's Kevin, my review for Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 4, The Last of the Starks, and obviously I was very much looking forward to this episode. We only have like 3 episodes left, which is just crazy to think about. After this one, there's only 2, and I can't believe how much the show is getting down to the wire. And I will say, after last week's episode, I was a little bit worried that, this wasn't going to deliver as much because of how sort of disappointing last week's was. I still enjoyed last week's episode, but there was a lot of missed potential there for sure. Especially with the whole putting Jon and Daenerys in the outs when really the whole fight was supposed to be Jon and the Night King. But again, I already talked about that in my episode 3 review. I was very excited to see how things were going to be moving forward, and I have to say, this felt more like the Game of Thrones that I love. This was a fantastic episode. I really did love what we got here. I will say, however, I am starting to understand the critique of things are just moving a little bit too fast, and this episode I still really do love, but the majority of my complaints, which there aren't many, but there are a few things that happen in this episode that I actually would have wanted to see stretched out a bit more, and I think if we had like one more episode, they would have benefited from that, but overall, this was still a great episode, but let's just get into it right now. Now, of course, before we actually talk about, events in this episode, I have to address the elephant in the room, which I really don't want to talk about this, but, it's such a big deal. The fucking coffee cup, yes, if you guys don't know, which, if you're living under a rock or something, there is a scene in this episode. It involves when, they're at that, when they're celebrating and things like that. It is pretty clear that right next to Daenerys is a Starbucks coffee cup. Now, I don't know how this got in there. I don't know how this stayed. But honestly, I am baffled by the fact that they somehow let this in, that somehow they let this get past them. This is a show, and here's the thing, if this was a small show, say a show on, FX or something that a lot of people don't watch, then I can understand it, but this is Game of fucking Thrones. This show is an over $15 million budget. There is no reason why they couldn't have just looked at this, tweaked it out, and then, try to, do something about it from there. I don't understand how they let this get past them. It's so ridiculous. It's a really dumb error. And look, I'm sure there have been other errors before, but this is just, I don't understand how you get away with this. I mean, it's so anachronistic, it's so out of place, it's so noticeable. I will say, if someone hadn't brought it up, if this wasn't like a meme, then I probably wouldn't have noticed, but still, either way, the fact that it was as noticeable as it was to certain people, it just shows that they probably could have looked this over at least once or twice. All you need to do was just get the person that edits it, have them be like, all right, this episode's really great, we just got to tweak this one thing out, and, then you're fine. So that's really all you needed to do. But again, rant over, let's get into, actual stuff from a substantive perspective. So the first thing I really want to talk about is the way this episode opens, which I love. Now, a lot of this episode, it was very celebratory. It was very, it was very much a, victory sort of thing, because the Starks have won. They're trying to, accept their victory. They're trying to enjoy this sort of calm that they're not really used to, but there is a bit of somberness there. And what I really love about this opening is you see that every single person that had died at the Battle of Winterfell, regardless of who you thought it was, regardless of, who you really cared about and that it wasn't a big enough character. Every single one of these guys meant something to this character. Daenerys obviously is very much mourning Jorah. She is crushed about the fact that he's gone. You can see that Arya is really upset about the death of Beric. You see Sansa really upset about Theon, which is understandable. I mean, she was really willing to give Theon a second chance, telling him that, you know, he could be part of their family again, and it was a really great moment. And then to have Theon die, I mean, you can see how much this has hurt Sansa and how much of an impact this has had on her. You know, you get to see so yeah, you get to see that. You see Sam mourning over Ed, Jon over Lady Lyanna. So really, every single one of these guys that died have had some sort of impact on these characters, and you really do get to see that here. And I really did like the way things started out, and I thought it was a really great way to start off the episode. But really, this entire episode, it's about Daenerys and basically every single plan of hers just completely falling apart. I mean, you have someone like Daenerys who a couple episodes ago, she had all of these allies. She thought everything was going to work out great for her. She had Jon. She had this future that she thought was possible. You know, she had 3 dragons. Now she only has 2. And then that changes in this episode, of course, as we'll talk about. Now at the point where Daenerys is at, you can tell she's losing a lot of hope. And while she is telling everyone to celebrate after giving Gendry this title, which we'll talk about in a little bit, Daenerys throughout the entire episode is very somber. Daenerys feels like she's very left out. She feels alone, and it's very understandable, especially when she sees Jon. When Jon is in this episode, she sees him, you know, talking to Tormund, and Tormund is just buttering him up. He's gushing about how great of a defender he is, how much he cares about the family, how great he would be at being king of the North, which again, these are not necessarily things that Jon wants, but what this is proving to Daenerys is that by Jon having this support from the Night's Watch, by him having this really great family, the budding relationships between him and other characters, she very much feels out of the equation. She feels like her whole future with him is a fantasy, and it's very sad to see. And the moment that definitely really did get to me is even knowing that, you know, what Jon's true parentage is, she still goes to him. She tries to maintain their relationship, but you can see that he's not okay with it. Jon is a man full of morals. He's someone who, yes, he does care about Daenerys, and I think he genuinely did love her. I think he genuinely did want to start some sort of relationship, but the two of them are related, and he is not going to cost that. He is not going to, you know, he's not going to be in a romantic relationship with someone that is his family. He's just not going to do it, and even though Daenerys feels differently, he is not willing, and it's very sad to see, because on one hand, you can understand where Jon is coming from, but you can also understand how this really has shattered a lot of what Daenerys was hoping for. I mean, she was really hoping that she had Jon by her side. Maybe this could fix things with Sansa, but now she knows that she just is not a part of his life. She's going to be out of the equation. She's not all that important. Despite how Jon may feel about her, despite the way Jon may try to make her feel like she's important, she herself knows that she just does not have that much of a future with him, and it's very sad to see. He is, willing to tell Sansa and Arya, and look, I love Jon, but his naivety there, yeah, that was definitely one of the rare times where he was very much wrong. We knew for a fact that this was not going to work out. He seems to think that everything's going to work out, and it's almost just as much of a fantasy as Daenerys' future with him was. So again, the whole thing, it's devastating to watch. You really do feel bad for Daenerys in this entire episode, but I have to say, Emilia Clarke throughout this entire show, this episode in particular, every episode she's great, but this episode in particular, I think is some of her finest work yet. Just the quieter moments where you can just see, even though she is acting celebratory, even though she's acting like this is a very welcoming and just a very happy occasion, she herself is not feeling happy. She always has some sort of trace of sadness in her, and you can really see that throughout this episode. It looms all over the entire thing, and I think Emilia Clarke gave some of her finest work throughout this entire episode. I thought she was fantastic here. But really the real conflict comes in when Daenerys basically brings up the idea of already starting up another battle. She does not want to waste any time. Now that they've won Battle of Winterfell, she wants to get right into it. She knows that Cersei is on that Iron Throne. She knows she's losing allies, and she feels that there is not a better time to strike than now. And you can see Sansa and Arya and all of them, they're very trepidatious with this. They're saying, look, I know we want to do this, we want to do it as well, but these guys are tired, and we want them to wait. We don't want them to strike right this second. It's not going to work out. But Daenerys is, she is relentless. She wants this to get done, and again, you can see why this is a problem for Sansa. You can see why Sansa doesn't like Daenerys, because again, Daenerys thinks that she has this authority. She's coming in very, very overconfident, and you really do see that here. She thinks this is going to go perfect for them, but Sansa knows that they're just not ready. I mean, they just completed the Battle of Winterfell, and sure, a lot of them came out of it alive, but they still lost quite a few men. They're still trying to get over, the battle. Some of them were very seriously injured. It's not a good time to strike yet, but Daenerys is not willing to listen to that, and I think that's ultimately what does seal her fate in this episode. But Jon does end up telling Sansa and Arya, of course, the truth about Daenerys, and this was really one of my only problems with this episode, and why I think it was a little rushed, is that I would have wanted to see their reactions. I would have actually wanted to see, how they took this news, because we don't really get to see that, unfortunately. He asked Bran to tell them, but we don't really see their reactions to what was actually, how they actually feel about this. But he does tell them to not really tell anyone about it. Sansa gets this close to telling Tyrion, but she doesn't tell him. She knows that if she does tell Tyrion, then that's going to go to Varys, and it's just not going to end well, so she ends up not telling him, and, again, I like the fact that Sansa and Arya know about this now, but I wish that we got to see their reactions. I think there was a little bit of missed opportunity, and I would have wanted to see a little bit more there. But of course, before he does tell them, they have this conversation where he's talking to Arya, and Arya tells him that, look, she agrees with him wanting to pledge his allegiance to Daenerys, and she admires him for that, but her and Sansa are not going to bend the knee. They do not agree with her, and they do not think that she is good for them. She thinks that, she is just rushing things, and yeah, she definitely is. I mean, she really is. It is best to prolong this. It is best to take a hiatus, and you can see that Daenerys doesn't really feel that way, and I really do like the moment where Arya is saying that, look, you're the last of the Starks. Even though you don't feel like a Stark, you are the last of the Starks, and it's in your best interest to stay allied with us. And I'm interested in seeing really where that does, of course, end up going, but again, just hearing these scenes, hearing what's going on, it does not feel like Daenerys is very much a part of Jon's life anymore. It's sad to see, obviously. We know how much that Jon cares about her, but at the moment, it does not seem like things are working out very well for her at all, and you definitely do see that here. And it's not just Jon that is trying to convince Sansa. Tyrion attempts to as well, and Sansa isn't really into it at all. That's when she does, in fact, spill the beans about Jon. You had to go behind his back like that. But this gets Tyrion to think very differently about this whole ordeal, because Varys and him have this conversation. Great scene, may I add. I mean, Peter Dinklage and Conleth Hill, they've been doing some really great work, but I feel like these last few seasons, they kind of relegated them to the background. This is their best work in a long time. I loved this scene between them, where basically they talk about how they're on opposite sides now. Varys feels like, because of this whole situation, that maybe Daenerys needs to be killed. Maybe she doesn't need to be around. Maybe Jon is the better person. And Tyrion tells him, look, I understand where you're coming from, but he's tired of the bloodshed. He doesn't want people to die. He just doesn't want things to turn out in King's Landing the way it does. He wants to believe that there's a way to negotiate this in a way that doesn't have to end with a battle. And obviously, I think a part of Tyrion knew that this was not going to work out. I think he knows very well that this isn't going to, be a possible outcome, but I think he wants to at least try. He's tired of the fights. He's tired of the constant violence, and you can understand. I mean, especially in the Battle of Winterfell, he's never been at the forefront of a battle quite like that before. Sure, he's been in other events, but that was really the first time where his life was almost on the line, and he just doesn't want to see anyone else die. So you can understand why he is very adamant about this not happening, and I just really like seeing the contrast there, because on one hand, Varys is making some great points, that Jon is really great at being the king in the north. You know, he does have the Starks behind his back. You know, he wants to get the Starks, because remember, the Starks started out the show on top. They had everything. They were in power, but of course, you know, Cersei and Jaime, they were the ones who took it away from them, and ever since then, it's been them trying to, you know, get that title back, and it'd be a great way of doing that. But the one caveat there is that Jon doesn't want it. Jon is not interested in this title. Jon doesn't really care about that. He's never cared about that title. He just cares about defending his family. And that's why, again, I just don't think Jon is going to end this show on the Iron Throne. I think Daenerys or Sansa are far more qualified, and you know, we've seen that a lot of times even throughout this season. So I think that's probably what's going to happen. Even Tyrion, I think, has a better shot of ending up on the Iron Throne. I just do not see Jon ending up there. It does not seem to fit his character. I mean, maybe he does, but at least to me, I just don't think that's happening. But we'll have to see what ends up happening there. Now, before we do get to the epic conclusion, which there's a lot to talk about, of course, I do want to talk about this one scene with Cersei, because Cersei does not have really much dialogue at all in this episode, but we do get one scene between her and Euron, and it confirms a few things. One, Cersei is definitely pregnant. I think this is definitely a sincere thing. We definitely do get to see this here. You know, there's been some there's been some skepticism on whether or not we should actually believe her on the validity of it all, but I think her telling Euron that, you know, this is your child, I think she is very much pregnant, and I don't think that she is lying about that, but I also think it very much confirms that she doesn't really care that much about Euron, and it makes sense why. I mean, from Cersei's perspective, look at it this way, she's lost everyone at this point. Jaime's gone, you know, Tyrion is not by her side, she really doesn't have anyone at this point. The only person that she really has is Qyburn. Euron cares about her, so obviously she's going to keep him around. Obviously she's going to manipulate him. Even if she doesn't give a shit about him, even if she doesn't like him very much, she's going to want to keep him around because he's really one of her only allies left. And seeing what he does for her, seeing, you know, what ends up happening here, it shows why she needs Euron, because Daenerys goes in there, despite Sansa and all of them telling her that they need to wait, she doesn't care. She goes in there with the Dothraki, she goes in there with Missandei and Grey Worm, they all get in there, and basically, you know, Euron just starts firing. He starts firing. Rhaegal, unfortunately, is killed, and it's a devastating moment. You see Daenerys went in there so confident, so sure that she was going to win, so sure that she had this plan in motion, and it just backfires so quickly for her. Not only is Rhaegal killed, but very quickly Missandei is kidnapped, and Daenerys just knows from that point on, this is not going to work out for her. There is no possible way that she is going to, there's no possible way this is going to go the way she wants. There's no possible way that Missandei comes out of this alive, and that whole scene where Tyrion does decide to go to her, which, the way that's ended, that could have been the ending of the episode. Like, when Tyrion falls into the river, and, we don't know if he's going to live. Obviously, we knew they weren't going to kill Tyrion, but that could have been the ending of the episode, but it's not. We see he goes to Cersei, and he tries to reason with her. He tries to get her to come off the throne. He tries to get her to accept that, look, I know that, you want to stay in power, but just because you're in power, it does not, just because you're not in power, it does not mean that you have to die. But remember, to Cersei, this is a life or death situation. One of the first things she ever said to, one of the things she ever said to Eddard Stark is that when you play the Game of Thrones, you play it for life or death. So to Cersei, if she's not in power, she's basically dead. She really doesn't have a reason to exist at that point. And obviously Tyrion does not see it this way. He's trying to negotiate with her, but Cersei was never going to listen to him. There was no possible way that this was going to work out. And again, I think Tyrion even knew this was not going to work out. I don't think that this was Tyrion. I don't think he had any optimism whatsoever. I think this is just something that he wanted to try. He wanted to hope that maybe this could work. Maybe he could, find a way to settle this without any carnage. Maybe he could do this without having any casualties, but it's too late. Missandei is killed, and what a devastating end. But Daenerys' reaction towards the end of the episode, this is when her wrath is finally starting to settle in. After the rejection, after realizing that she really doesn't have anyone else on her side, it really is going to be Cersei versus Daenerys at this point, and that's the way things do end for her plotline. It's a thrilling ending for sure. It's devastating to see Missandei die, especially the look on Grey Worm and Daenerys' face, but the way things do play out, it's going to be very interesting. We're going to talk about what I think is going to happen there in a little bit, but of course there's other stuff to talk about first. So the other big development going on this episode is the one between Jaime and Brienne. Now, this was a very surprising pairing. A lot of people thought that they were trying to pair Brienne and Tormund together, but no, we go with Jaime and Brienne, and it made a lot of sense. I mean, what we've been able to get with Jaime and Brienne is nothing short of extraordinary. Jaime really does see Brienne as an individual. He really has a lot more sympathy for her. He seems to care about her a lot more, and especially the moment when, what starts off as this very fun drinking game, it gets Brienne to reveal that she is a virgin, and you see Jaime wants to do something about it. He wants to be the one to take her virginity. He does get to, and it's a really great moment, and you realize that Jaime and Brienne have this really healthy relationship, and I really like the way that was done, and especially the moment when he's talking to Tyrion, and he says that, maybe this could work out for him. They plan on staying in Winterfell. They plan on being together. They plan on possibly starting a future, and it's a really great moment for sure. The problem is with this plot line, this is the only problem I have, I needed a little bit more. I needed a little bit more besides them in bed together and, one day Brienne sees him and he's not there. I needed just a little bit more going on, so that way that final scene, which is so well done, could be that much more effective. But considering how great Nikolaj, Coster-Waldau, and Gwendoline Christie, who really have been stepping up their game this season, I mean, they've always been great, but this season in particular, I think they're absolutely incredible, and particularly in that final scene of this episode, I think that alone, I mean, they really did sell it very well, because Jaime does get word of what Cersei plans to do, and he realizes that he's going to go back to her, and it's a devastating scene for sure. He talks about how, he has done all of these things for Cersei. He had to push Bran out the window because of Cersei. He strangled a man to death just because of Cersei, and I think this is basically him saying that, look, he wants to be with Brienne. He wants to have this future with her, but he knows that he needs to be the one to put this to a stop. He's been prolonging this for too long. I think he's going to kill Cersei. At least I want to believe. I want to believe that this is him wanting to kill Cersei. This is not him trying to, win her back or something. This is not him trying to get back into the good graces. I don't think that's what this is. I think this is him, killing Cersei once and for all, getting her off the Iron Throne. He knows that he needs to be the one to do it, and he knows that he needs to let Brienne be on her own for a while. Obviously Brienne, she wants to fight, but he wants her to sit this one out. He wants her to survive, and I love that moment. It was a great moment for Jaime. I am very excited to see where that's going. It's obviously devastating for Brienne, but I do think Jaime is going to come out of this victorious. I do think, out of everyone, he's going to be the one to kill Cersei. I don't think Daenerys kills her. I think it's Jaime. I've said this since Season 7, and I still believe that Jaime is the one that kills Cersei, and I think the moments like this very much confirm it. I think it's something that, again, he has been toying with for a while, and now that she has killed Rhaegal and she's kidnapped Missandei, and obviously he doesn't know, but she's dead now, now he is going to kill her. Now there's no question about it anymore. He is going to kill Cersei, and I'm very interested in seeing how that does play out. So again, I really did love that plot line. Of course, we also do see a few character departures, or at least it seems like departures in this episode. The moment between Sam, Jon, and Gilly was great. I love the way that turned out. I love when Sam and Gilly basically announced that they are having a child, and Jon talks about how great of a man Sam is, and he lets him be on his own, and it's a great moment. I mean, Sam has been Jon's best friend. That's how he started out in this show. These two have really had this great friendship, and seeing Jon, tell him that he's a great man, seeing Jon tell him that he can be on his own, and seeing Sam and Gilly just be happy, it's a great moment, and I do think this is how things end for them. I don't think we're going to see them after this episode. I think this is the perfect place for their story to end, and I'm hoping it is. I don't really want to, I mean, if you do like a montage at the end of the show, by all means, yeah, show them, but I want this to be the end. I don't want this to be a thing where it's like, oh, Sam and Gilly are going to die because of this. No, I want this to be a sincere thing where this is how they depart the show. I think it would make sense if they do leave the show like this, and I would be perfectly fine if this is the last we see of Sam and Gilly, because I thought it was such a great moment. I love the way all of that turned out. I thought that they definitely ended that as good as they possibly could, and I definitely really did love that for sure. I know a lot of people talk about this. As much as I did love the Sam and Gilly stuff, I wish we would have gotten something like that with Ghost, because he just kind of abandons him. We don't really get that moment with Ghost that we're hoping for, and this is another thing where, like, if they would have added another scene, I think it would have been fine, but did we really need it? No, but obviously, Ghost was Jon's dog. It was a little weird that he just kind of left him there, but I think Tormund as well, this could be the last we see of him, but knowing that Brienne is there, I don't think this is the last we see of Tormund. I think this is definitely the end of Sam and Gilly, though. I think it very much, this episode confirms that, and I will be very surprised if that's not the case. So, really, the only other thing to talk about is with Arya and Gendry. Daenerys does appoint Gendry as a Baratheon. He now has a chance of possibly being on the throne. Obviously, we thought Daenerys, we thought Sansa, but now it seems like Gendry has a shot. And not only does he have a shot, he wants Arya to be his queen. He wants Arya to be the lady on the throne, but obviously Arya doesn't want this title. She tells him that, look, you're a great man, I'm sure you're going to find a great woman, but I am not that woman, and we know this. Arya does not want anyone to have to tell her her destiny. She wants to control her own fate, and I think the way the show's going to end, she's going to go off with the Hound. They're going to go somewhere, and she's going to find her future that way. Obviously, with Gendry, it was more that she didn't know if she was going to live. She's always had feelings for him. He was there, and she wanted to, solidify. She wanted to lose her virginity. She didn't want to die a virgin, and, I think that was definitely a really great moment, but I don't think it's something that Arya ever intended to last. And the moment with Gendry, yes, it's sad, but she let him down very gently, and I did like the way that turned out. But knowing that Gendry now has a shot on the throne, I think is definitely a very interesting possibility. Overall, there's definitely a lot of interesting... So, moving forward, there definitely is a lot to talk about. I mean, next week, you know how I was disappointed by the Battle of Winterfell? As I alluded to in the beginning of this video, I think next week is that big battle that we're all waiting for. I mean, you see Cersei, and a couple episodes ago, I would have said, oh, Cersei's naive. Cersei has no idea what she's getting herself into. And now it seems like it's the other way around. Now it seems like Cersei has been preparing for this for a long time. It seems like she's been gearing up for Daenerys to arrive. And, now this is war. And I think Daenerys is going to find herself in a difficult position. But we also see the wrath that Daenerys unleashed here. I mean, you can see how angry she is about the death of Missandei, about the death of Rhaegal, and even the fact that the Starks aren't on her side, Jon isn't on her side. This is all she has at this point. Nobody is willing to really fight for her except for maybe Tyrion. Everyone else, I mean, Jon cares about her, but as Tyrion said, it would take him 2 weeks to get there. They don't have that kind of time. They need to get this done now. So I think Daenerys, I think she definitely does have a shot, but I think she has vastly underestimated Cersei, and you definitely do see that here for sure, and especially with Euron by her side, it's easy to understand that though Cersei doesn't really care about Euron, you know why she has been so loyal to Euron and why she really needs Euron cheer on in that way because he will do anything for her, and I'm very interested in seeing how that plays out. Like I said, though, I don't see this episode ending without Jaime killing Cersei. I think he's the one who gets her. I think it's going to turn out that way. It would make the perfect sense because nobody really understands Cersei better than Jaime, and Jaime is the only one I think that would legitimately be able to manipulate her. If he was the one convincing her to come off that throne, I think she would still be, steadfast about it, but I think he would be a little bit more convincing. I think his pitch would be a little bit more different, and I think he is intending to kill her, and I'm excited to see the way that does turn out. Oh yeah, I also forgot to talk about the scene with Bronn, with Tyrion and Jaime. That felt a little inconsequential. Obviously, Cersei sent Bronn to kill them, and the way that turned out, I don't know, it felt a little too tacked on for me. I understand that obviously we don't want them to die, but just the way that all turned out with Bronn very quickly just being on their side, obviously saying I'm not going to fight alongside you, but I'm not going to stop you either. I don't really understand it. It seemed like he was loyal to Cersei, and now he's not. So I don't really know why that turned out the way it did, but like I said, I do think this is the last we see of Sam and Gilly. Interested in seeing the way that does turn out. As far as the Starks go, again, I think at this point, while Jon wants to have that future with Daenerys, and while he does see her as his queen, he knows that romantically, there's no future for them. He has his morals. He's not going to be in a relationship with his aunt, and it's simple as that. And as much as Daenerys wants to believe that that could be their future, and they still have that future, unfortunately, Jon does not feel the same way. And it's sad to see, obviously, because again, Daenerys, she wants that future with him. She would do anything I think she genuinely did want to have a relationship with him, but unfortunately it's just not going to work out, and Sansa and Arya especially are not helping, and I'm interested in seeing where Tyrion and Varys go as well. Obviously, they're on very opposite sides of the spectrum right now. Varys feels like Daenerys is expendable, but Tyrion, feels loyal to her. He feels like he owes this to her. He's really the only one, like I said, that seems to go to bat for her, and he doesn't want any more of this bloodshed. And again, I don't think Tyrion dies next week. There's no way that Tyrion ends up dying. I think definitely he is going to survive till the end of the show. But I do think that, I think he knew that his pitch was not going to work. I think he wanted to see if it could. I think he just wanted to try it out because he is tired. He is tired of the constant battles. He is tired of the violence, and you can't really blame because of how consistent it has really been. And then as far as Gendry, like I said, Gendry now has a shot at possibly being on the Iron Throne as well. I'm interested in seeing how that turns out. In terms of who kills Cersei, like I said, I do think it's absolutely Jaime. Some people are saying Arya, and look, I'll say this. People were complaining about Arya killing the Night King. I would be so much more pissed if Arya is the one to kill Cersei. There would be no reason for it. At that point, she would just be nothing more than a Deus Ex Machina to me, and I would be very upset if they went in that direction. Overall, though, I enjoyed this episode immensely. I think this is definitely one of the best of the season for sure. Like I said, there are a couple things that felt a little bit rushed. The scene where Jon is talking to Sansa and Arya and reveals them as true parentage, I wanted to see their reaction. I wanted to see how they would feel about it, and unfortunately we just did not get to see that revelation. The moment, like I said, between Jon and Jon and Ghost, I would have wanted to see something more there. The Bronn thing felt very tacked on and rushed. That didn't really work as well for me. And I will say, as much as I enjoyed the Jaime and Bran relationship, I just needed one more scene. Seeing them happy together, seeing how Jaime is genuinely considering this future, which I do think it is going to work out for him. I can see this working out very well for him if he does kill Cersei. If not, then that'd be a very interesting direction for the show. And maybe the Tormund and Brienne pairing would happen then, but we'll have to see the way that does turn out. But I would have wanted to see at least one more scene there. So again, I do think that this episode was a little bit rushed, but ultimately I can't say whether this season is rushed until I see the way things play out. If things play out in an organic way that feels complete, that feels like this is everything we've been building up to, and I mean, this has to be Battle of the Bastards level. I mean, this is Cersei Lannister. This has been one of the biggest villains of the entire series. This has been that character that we love to hate. We need this. They cannot rush this. This cannot be something that they botch. We need to see this play out in its fullest potential. potential. We need to see them just go all out. I do not want to see, I mean, sure, the characters that died in the last episode, we saw how much that impacted these characters, but I want to see hard-earned consequences. I want to see tons of bloodshed. I want some real stakes, and I think we're definitely going to get that next week, and I hope it does not disappoint. And again, then I can say whether the season is rushed or not. But again, at the end of the day, it really does not hinder my enjoyment of this episode. This was still a fantastic episode overall. Such great dialogue, so many great character stuff, and just in general, that ending alone reminds me why I love the show as much as I do. I can't believe we're getting to the very end, but we are getting there very quickly for sure. I am so excited to see the way things play out, even though I'm also very scared to see what ends up happening to Daenerys, as if she couldn't lose enough already, and Cersei. I'm very excited to see the way things turn out there. So overall, I am going to give this episode of Game of Thrones, Season 8, Episode 4, The Last of the Starks, an A-. But over, guys, to my review of this episode of Game of Thrones. Let me know what you guys saw of this episode overall. Left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.